much for joining us here at the First Alert Desk. I'm Maria Moreau. Welcome back to our conversation surrounding Black History Month. We are going to be delving into a very interesting topic, and one that a lot of adults have a hard time navigating but is so important to talk about, and that is talking to young children, young minds, about the importance of diversity and navigating that world. And to talk to us today is preschool educator Tina Van Horne with the Goddard School of Suwanee. Tina, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hello.
So I wanted to bring you into this discussion because you as an educator have this time with these young children who are molding and growing and just absorbing everything around the world. And part of that is having conversations with them about how to navigate relationships that involve inclusivity and diversity. So I'd love to talk to you about this today. Let's start with the importance of diversity and having that conversation.
Well, I find that it's really important. I work with the kids that I work with are very young, late threes, early fours. So I try to do like lots of celebrations with them because I recognize that a lot of the kids are from we have different backgrounds. Well, we look different, we talk different, we sound different. So I like to celebrate. So I focus a lot on the calendar, and it's always different things on the calendar, different things you can celebrate. And sometimes some of the things are familiar to some of the kids, and they'll say, well, I did that with my mommy, where the other kids will say, well, I don't know what that is. So I try to celebrate the parents to make it comfortable for them because they are young and they do ask questions. Well, why do you look like that? Or why do you sound like that? So once I start sharing different things with them and doing things that they can relate to, it seems to be a little easier for them.
And that's a good point, you know, about young children, young minds having that curiosity about the world and themselves. And as adults, that can sometimes be scary. And I know you and I talked about that a little bit before we jumped on this interview. For the adults that are trying to have this conversation with young children, what are some things that they can keep in mind themselves when they're answering those curious questions?
So I find that if you keep it simple, because they're really young. So when you keep it simple, they'll ask the question, well, why does Miss Tina sound like that? Or why does my friend look like that? And when they say, well, we're different, because we have to lay a foundation for them to learn to respect differences. And that really works with me in the classroom. So as a parent, because I have kids too, they'll say, mommy this or mommy that. And I'll say, well, we're all different. And then I'll start to look up things on the internet. Because at the Goddard School, we have a thing every month. We take the calendars out and we'll look at the calendar and we'll pull out different holidays or different celebrations. And then once I present them to the children, they enjoy it.
I think a big question a lot of people have is how young or at what age is the best time to bring this conversation about?
It starts when they're when they're 3 and 4 years old. They ask questions all the time. So it's best to lay that foundation to keep it simple with them. So when they start to grow, the questions get different and it's more intense. And they'll start asking different things. And if you already started to lay a foundation, it seems to be a little easier because when they were 3 years old, you said this. Now that they're 5 and they're 6 and they're 7 and 8, it's different. And then they learn to respect the differences.
And another part of that is they are forming their friendships, their relationships with other kids their age. So it's a good time to, talk about this so that when they are engaging in that way, they can be mindful. Another thing we touch upon often as we're deciding on, how we're going to talk to young people about diversity and race and inclusivity and all those important conversations that really we as a society should have is who does the responsibility fall with? We rely on our teachers to navigate some of the concepts that are going to help our young people in life, but parents also have a critical role. So at the end of the day, who should be involved in this?
So I feel at the end of the day, parents as well as teachers. So it's my job as a teacher to lay the foundation. So they'll ask me questions and then I'll say, when you go home, you can talk about it with mom or you can talk about it with dad. So we have to do it together. We have to celebrate together with our children. When they ask questions, I'll give a little bit of, I'll say, well, you can do this. And then they'll go home and they'll talk with mom. Well, Miss Tina said this. And what do you think? And sometimes it makes it easier when I start the foundation for them and then they can just build on it as parents. It makes it really easy when you start young.
And, with certain parents that might have challenges discussing this conversation, or just feeling that nervousness to include their child, especially if they are preschool age or just starting out in
Yeah.
school. Are there any online tools? I know you mentioned the Goddard school does have some resources for parents to check out, but are there any other online tools or places that parents can
So
go?
So a lot of times well, in our classroom, the easiest thing that I do is I do go into the Goddard School website, and also all types of websites. You can just like, I use Google a lot. I'll say, well, hey, Google, because they're young, to keep it simple. And I'm able to gather information if I'm given a topic, because it's easy for me because I receive a monthly bin, and inside of it, so much information that I can look up. I have books that I can read to the children. And I always recommend the parents to just go out and even ask your teachers, do you have books about certain things, or any type of literature that I can use at home, artwork, just to include them into any type of celebration that we're having. And we do pretty good with it so far. I just study the calendar. The calendar tells you everything. So this week we're doing this, next week that. So when, different holidays come up, it's a little bit easier. Well, we just celebrated that. Now we're going to celebrate this week, because you want to be inclusive so everyone can be included. So it's not a strange thing to the children.
And that's a fantastic point, is just making this such a positive learning
Hmm.
experience for them. Another part of this, is as kids, they're curious, they're just trying to figure it all out, is catching moments of intolerance among our children if we see some sort of bullying. And that doesn't even have to just include the topic of diversity and race, but just catching those instances in our children. What is the best way to navigate having that conversation in the moment and almost course correcting and setting them on the right path for success?
So, because I work with the really young, so it's really easy for me because my kids are 3 and 4. So when I see things happening, they love, you're my friend or you're my best friend. I say, well, we're all friends. I said, because if you have a best friend, you can only have one, but when you have a lot of friends, everybody can be your friend. So I always try to bring an example to them, like, you only want one friend, how about a lot of friends? And then they'll say, okay, so they look at it in a different way. I try to give them an example of how your friend would feel. Oh, you don't want to play with me today, but tomorrow I'm with this friend. So it's like giving them examples. To me, I give them examples of how your friends feel. You're making me feel sad today, or I feel happy today. So it's like giving them examples about the way that we feel, so we can learn to respect each other and our differences.
Yeah, certainly. And part of what we are doing here at the First Alert Desk, looking at history, Black history specifically, but also looking at the future and how we can move history forward. Thank you so much for joining us here. I just want to make sure we didn't leave anything out. This is such an important conversation to have and to continue to have, and getting everyone involved in that. Any final thoughts, advice to parents and other
Yes.
educators out there?
I would just say that we need to focus on celebrating each other, celebrate everything, not just one holiday. We need to celebrate all types of traditions, and it could be simple things, sampling different foods, just do different things that we normally don't do with our kids, just to celebrate, to build a foundation, and when they grow older, they'll learn to respect each other and our differences.
Tina Van Horne, thank you so much for joining us here and
Thank
having
you.
this conversation with us. Again, this is Tina Van Horne, preschool educator with the Goddard School of Suwanee. All of these
Thank you.
tips, this conversation with Tina is going to be available on our website, atlantanewsfirst.com. Make sure you check it out.
All right, thank you.